Webcam microphone up close. Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
But I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain,
I look like
choice, internet, professional wrestlers, and not just Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from, as long as it's real. It's hard to get real these days. Because seriously, they don't want you to have just raise two sources whenever I try to prove out. It's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to be sadly disappointed. Another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty old man, huh?
Hey Johnny, how about a beer?
I'm serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions. Eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from Pima Region 2. Within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America, we bring you the
Ochelli Effect. Because I damn sure know I'm an original.
We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for
that.
For a 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out.
And that is certainly that. It is a Thursday night. We are live on UCY.TV radio. This is the Ochelli Effect. I am Chuck Ochelli. You probably know that already. Anyhow, a couple of quick little wonderful housekeeping type things. Nobody's actually looking at the SoundCloud, but if you want to, Chuck Ochelli on the SoundCloud. If you're catching this further downstream somehow or other, go to ucy.tv/TOE, and you'll find the page that corresponds to this show, which also has the running chat room, which goes in a ubiquitous fashion throughout the network and during all the shows, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And there you go. So, what do we have today? Well, I'm a little tired. Rough times sometimes. But hey, what are you going to do? I'm going to bring on Dylan Wade again, which, of course, last Thursday night, we had a discussion with him and a young man named Colton, who was a typical sort of neocon kind of kid, which was kind of interesting to me because I wasn't sure how those guys actually, exist prior to the age of 30 and all that. Let's see now. Not sure if I have Dylan, but I'm trying to get him. They sort of debated about a bunch of different topics. I tried to keep it structured and fair at all times. Dylan, you're with me, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I tried to keep things pretty structured during that debate and everything, and we'll get to that later because we're going to recap it a bit. But first, let's go over a couple of things. Oh, you're not happy about that, are you?
Not my proudest moment.
Well, it's okay. Dylan is the host of The Truth Speaks and, is just interesting to me, not just because of his age, but I'll tell you, it is one of the driving factors that makes him interesting to me because we're always talking about integrating younger people into getting a hold of the reality that is in our world at this point. And that's what we're all about here, is trying to study the psychosocial constructs, the mass media deceptions, and on and on. So, The Truth Speaks. Well, interesting show. I've done it a couple of times during the YouTube version of it, and now it's on Shake and Wake Radio, right?
Correct.
Yep. And we'll see how it develops from there. Okay. First thing I want to address with you, Dylan, is that I do this to myself all the time. I don't know why I do it, but, sometimes I just sit there and say, okay, mainstream media, hit me with your best shot. Let's see what you're doing. And of course, immediately we're confronted by, this afternoon anyway, the continuous replay of the comments from, Hillary and all of her wonderful self out there on the stage, making comments about Ferguson and the situation, revolving around the Michael Brown shooting and all of that. And I got to tell you that my first objection here had nothing to do with her comments exactly, but the fact that the mainstream framed it as, well, she wanted to make her commentary as a mother and a human being. Now, I don't challenge the assertion that she may be a mother, but human being, however, I am unconvinced. Sorry, that's just the way I see it. Now, if you want to look at pompous sort of commentary about things that you have no idea about, well, look, you have no further to look than Hillary, so we can always check her out. But meanwhile, in the 4 o'clock hour today, of course, the head meat puppet in charge, Lord Cousin Barry there, our supposed and alleged president of the United States, decided to come out and give a little press conference, which was being hyped all day as the follow-up to the meetings regarding, what is the name? Well, he kept saying ISIL during his press conference, so I guess I'll adopt that term for now.
Depends on who you talk to.
Right. So the ISIS part of the reaction, solution, all that kind of fun stuff, the dialectic. I don't really need to explain that to people who listen to me. You know what I'm talking about. But I did want to just kind of observe that thing live and see how they would cut it up later. And I do this to myself all the time, Dylan. I don't know why.
I don't even bother anymore.
Yeah, I mean... it's interesting to put it in context because, after all, regardless of the fact that he is, effectively powerless, and people say, well, no, actually, he's taken over more power in the executive branch than any other president, which is highly inaccurate, even based on the public deception about who actually holds power in this country. But the reality is that he's nothing more than a corporate spokesperson, and the corporation remains nameless, faceless, and soulless, as it should. But the reality here is that the spokesperson for the conglomerate of corporations, Barry, Barack Hussein Obama, whatever you want to call him, the alleged president of the United States, of course, comes out and begins his little press briefing, stating that, hey, the economy is actually doing a lot better than we thought it was doing. Well, I find that kind of sad because, after all, how bad does the economy have to be doing for you to think it's doing better, sir? I don't know, but good luck to you there. You got any sort of commentary about that, Dylan?
About the press conference in general?
No, just about that particular comment. Let's break it down piece by piece really quick, just because I don't often dissect these, false left-right paradigm people's statements, as a whole. So
my Skype cut out. Which comment? I'm sorry.
Oh, about the economy having been performing much better than they had originally projected, and actually improving in recent statistical and analytical collections of data. According
it's only getting better if you believe the propaganda.
Well, yeah, I mean, after all, the falsified unemployment rates alone ought to make us all feel a lot better, don't you think?
Yeah, and I don't get what their game is here. I mean, what's going to happen when it all collapses? What's their game?
I don't know about that, but I do know that that you have to sort of give people the idea that there is a comfort zone that they need to defend when it's time to engage in one of these, adventures into other areas of the world where we're going to participate in, the global fanning of the flames, et cetera, et cetera. But hold on, there's more to come in this press conference. That's just the opening sort of statement, right? I noticed the continuing rhetoric about building a coalition, an international coalition, coming out of Barry's mouth. And, it did remind me and just called me back to that earlier time when I kept hearing about that coalition of the willing, the W was building. And I say again, if you don't realize that these guys are playing for the same team, you really need to adjust your glasses. Okay, so We have also the sending Kerry again into Iraq. Just bullet points here, ladies and gentlemen, because to actually quote every single thing would take longer than the press conference because I'm going to comment about a lot of this stuff. So you have the Ukraine with the Russians being responsible for the violence there. Completely. Trying to make sure, don't forget about the Russian demon, by the way, because although they are not religious extremists or part of the normal boogeyman theme here, ladies and gentlemen, they are an alternative sort of, an alternative outlet for your fears, if you like. So don't forget, the Russian Federation, as did the Soviet Union, stand to be a global boogeyman as well. What do you think there?
It's amazing how many boogeymen they can create with just the flick of their wrist, really.
Well, you have to have, good selection. Any menu does, right, Dylan?
I agree, but it's just amazing that they could get away with creating over 3 boogeymen.
Well, it's difficult to have junk food for the brain if you only offer one flavor of potato chips. I mean, it's just that simple. So you got to give them a couple of different flavors, and and also try and appeal to those who don't understand, and are too afraid to embrace the the Middle Eastern boogeyman, because after all, that would label them as racist in certain circles. But
but doesn't that just haven't people given up on that?
Well, obviously not, because we still see the race pimping domestically, regarding police shootings and everything else. And whereas I have, and many other, legitimate broadcasters, I would say, have stated that this is more about us against them. This is more about the militarization of the local police forces against the citizenry, regardless of their, creed, ethnicity. It's really just, let's divide and conquer so that all the people don't rise up at once and say, hey, I don't think my local police force requires armored personnel carriers, in...
That's kind of ridiculous that they'd even give anyone that technology.
Well, there's that. There's the, the increased intimidation factor of dressing these guys more like mercenaries than anything else, and wonder. And what is publicly known about what the Fed has handed down to the local police forces is frightening enough. I guarantee you, though, there is a back end to this. There is a separate and secret sort of, dissemination of these types of equipment and everything else. I guarantee you there's more to the story than we're allowed to know, because that's the name of the game, generally.
It's the nature of the beast.
Absolutely. So back to the Ukraine thing, because of course I digress and fly off the handle like I always do.
And I do it too.
Yeah, well, you got it, right?
Yeah, there's so much to talk about, so much to cover.
Well, right, and and I like to remind people about certain things, and it's just, like I said, the call back to the coalition. Every time I hear an American president talking about an international coalition to go take care of a regional problem, which virtually has nothing to do with us domestically, I cringe. Sorry. I just do. And even though I know they're just the spokespeople and they're not really the people in power, they are the figureheads who are going to be, the easily latched on responsible parties for this stuff. And they usually do, take their responsibility and spin it every which way they can. And the mainstream, of course, co-ops along with this and collaborates in the delusion, obsessive, massive sort of distractions and everything else in order to keep the sleepwalking still asleep while they walk around. So, back to it. The Russian, the Russians being responsible. Well, here's what I found extremely laughable too, is that he said repeatedly, but I'm going in chronological order here. These sanctions make Russia more isolated than at any other time since the Cold War. So he really believes that these so-called sanctions, these economic suppressions of the Russian Federation, are doing their venerable job. Isn't that interesting?
I don't even.
See, this is the hysterical part. Every one of these things that I bring up to you is all opened up with, when you're ready to comment, with a sigh, or with a gasp, or with like some sort of exasperated expression. And
sorry.
No, it's okay. Listen, I want your natural reaction to this stuff. we're gonna talk about more natural reactions later, but my God, this is how I view it. And I sit there and I throw up my hands and I point at it, and whoever's sitting or standing near me when I'm looking at it, I say, do you honestly believe this nonsense? Had to edit myself there, sorry. But, it is what it is. So, of course, then he gets into the whole discussion about NATO and all that. All right. So now he's been allowed to make his propaganda statement as per usual, and stand there and look good and all that kind of stuff. And, good luck to you there. The questions begin. Okay, the first question sums up real easy. It was sort of like, look, Syrian military action, is it a question of if or when, or is there no question? We have to do something about Syria. Oh, boy. Obama then spins into the discussion about Iraq because, of course, ISIL, as he kept saying, ISIL, let me correct myself, ISIL allows him to be able to meander between discussing the Syrian problem as it is portrayed and the Iraqi problem as we created it, of course, and is portrayed. So he's got that narrative. He turns it around and he starts talking about the success of the airstrikes based on the fact that, he's been protecting U.S. assets that are on the ground. Does anybody bother to ask why it would be necessary to protect U.S. assets in Iraq far beyond a decade after we went in there supposedly to, eradicate the weapons of mass destruction, and Saddam Hussein, who was actually going to be a destabilizing agent to the region, regardless of the fact that Iraq has been the most destabilized, I think, in its history since,
it's ridiculous.
Days of ancient Persia. But, that's okay. And back to that debate really briefly, that kid was all about the fact that, look, it's a destabilized area, we have to do something, and the narrative that's being pumped through the mainstream at this point that ISIS, whatever, is this giant threat, is a threat to us as Americans, is a threat to American assets, is a threat to the empire, as it were, is just this major threat. And
I should have done a lot better with that point.
Yeah, well, and they of course bolster this this boogeyman narrative, today with the whole 250 Syrian soldiers on a death march, and wow, which we'll get into that more later. But I mean, for God's sake, when do people start to realize that they're watching fabrications? I mean, and I'm not one of these guys who likes to say that everything is fake, but I'll go on record and say I'm not buying the whole Foley beheading. I'm just not.
I have trouble with it too, honestly.
I've looked at it, and I'm telling you now, something is wrong. Something's wrong. I do not pretend to tell you exactly what is wrong there. But if you can look at that and tell me that appears to be a realistic portrayal of what occurred and everything about that video, what's in it, how it arrived, the quality of it and everything else, if all that stuff makes sense to you, I don't know what to say.
I've done work with video and audio.
Mm-hmm.
That is incredible. That audio and video is absolutely incredible. I don't think that could be done by a bunch of rebels on par with Al-Qaeda.
Well, see now, but in all fairness, the variance of the technology at this point allows a lot of leeway for everybody. I have seen some pretty good stuff done on YouTube by people who have, $80 smartphones. I mean,
I agree with that entirely. But my whole point is that it does take a lot of skill to get that kind of audio.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, having worked in the the dinosaur era of audio technology and working with tape and literally working with a razor blade and pieces of Scotch tape sometimes to handle things. Wow, did I just date myself? Probably. But the thing is, I happen to have a little bit of knowledge about this, and there is always a difficulty with synchronizing things and everything else. And of course, the digital age has changed that a great deal.
even to your point, Chuck,
Mm-hmm.
even if they had somebody really skilled with that kind of technology, which I highly doubt that they do, but let's go off that assumption that they do, there were no inconsistencies. The guy who was, they both had lavaliers, which are just small clip-on mics.
Mm-hmm.
They both had great lighting outside, unrealistic lighting, if you ask me. Because I've tried to get lighting outside, it's a pain in the neck.
Oh yeah, there's an art form to lighting anything for filming.
And the lighting didn't change a little bit.
Yeah,
which is amazing.
In this case, the consistency of the lighting is actually more suspicious than the inconsistencies of other things. And that's a very good point, and is something that I really wish people would look at.
And the audio is extremely clear, which I don't think it. Even for the guy who was beheaded, James Foley, his audio was really clear. I would have figured it would have been muffled a little bit.
Well, there's a crispness, and then, of course, that type of microphone does produce, a bit of background noise when you move it around and stuff like that.
Yeah, but there was no background noise even when he was beheaded.
Yeah, I know. And then there's a whole timing issue and tracking issue regarding, exactly how the human body behaves when it's cut in certain places, and I happen to know a little bit about this.
It cut out when he was beheaded a little bit.
Yeah, it's very questionable.
You could see a change in the angle.
Yeah, that's another weird thing. And how did you do that without the motion blur that would come from, say, physically moving something? And
even if it's just a little blur, just a little bit, it would be noticeable enough to sort of validate the video. But you can't validate this. This is really sloppy.
Right.
Sloppy on our part for faking it. Beautiful on the part of the people who did it. Absolutely flawless. Better than some Hollywood films.
Right. Nice, clean work. I got to give them that. So back to this question that was asked at the Obama press conference, because, again, we both just digressed into something else.
Yeah, but I think it needed to be said.
No, it's fine. It's fine, because I haven't really talked about this yet, and
neither have I.
It's been odd, and believe me, I got something to say about that audio of the shooting in Ferguson as well. But
do you want to go into that?
Well, not right now, because I want to finish the Obama thing before it takes over my whole show.
Okay.
Further, he again does the whole humanitarian efforts over there, and this is what we're backing the Iraqi. The Iraqi security forces.
I'm sorry, I have to comment now. When have we ever cared about it?
Wait a minute. We're backing Iraqi security forces, right? We want to be sure that ISIL is not overrunning Iraq. We will build a regional strategy with Sunni forces. Now, he mentions the Sunni forces several times and in several aspects of this entire problem. And why are we interjecting ourselves into a religious war that has gone on now for a very long time? The different sects of Islam. By the way, there's more than two. Most often mentioned are the Sunni and the Shia, or the Shiite, depending on who you're talking to. Well, the Kurds are not exactly they're not a sect of Islam. There are other sects of Islam, though. I mean, there's plenty of them. But the thing is, these are the two that are generally considered to be at each other's throats over a disagreement. And if you don't believe me, go look at it. Why is it that the Sunnis and the Shiites don't agree with each other? Go ahead and look it up. But interesting that we need to interject ourselves into that particular, narrative as well. Why are we, as a sovereign nation, supposedly, allegedly, introducing ourselves into what is essentially an ethnic and religious struggle again and again? Is it, and we deliver our humanitarianism, all across Iraq constantly. Of course, by, listen, here's plenty of bombs, here's plenty of civilian deaths, and in case that wasn't good enough for you, hey, added bonus, depleted uranium. Not to mention the fact that we got to keep destroying things so that we can let, our contractors make their fortunes and remake their fortunes and increase the size of their fortunes by rebuilding plenty of different things that you will never hear of or see again, probably. Look, we can spread this out over, beyond a decade. Why not? Why not? Brushfire warfare, right? Now, he also says that, as far as Syria goes, because, again, this question began with Syria. As far as Syria goes, that Assad has, quote, lost legitimacy, okay? ISIL is, quote, a cancer, and has come to represent the worst, the, quote, worst elements in the region, end quote. Okay?
There's one part of that I agree with.
Mm-hmm. I was wondering if you were going to strike on this. Go ahead.
If they're not the boogeymen, which we pretty much know they are, then they are some of the worst in the region because Al-Qaeda disowned them for being too brutal.
Yeah, but see, just because Al-Qaeda supposedly disowned them, again, don't be fooled. And by the way, don't look behind the curtain, because yet again we have another situation where the most extreme, Islamic, Islamo-fascist, whatever you want to call them, group in the region is once again one of these things that seems to have been propped up, financed, and probably founded, by intelligence assets from the West.
See? I don't know if it was founded by us, but we certainly funded it, at least before this, because of the whole fight with Assad. We've been funding that fight against Assad, and instead of going in right away, how about we stop arming them?
Well, that would be nice to do. And of course, this strikes upon the next part of, Obama's rhetoric, which was all about differentiating between the Assad boogeyman, essentially, and the ISIL boogeyman. And I don't know, I keep stumbling over ISIL because I thought it was, just a little more mystical when we were using ISIS, excuse me. We're not mentioning the caliphate today because I think people couldn't quite understand that. They got to give it a break so they can ramp it up again. Oh, I don't know, over the weekend. But interesting.
Yeah, something's going to happen this weekend.
But interesting that he says that we need to back the Sunnis because the Sunnis are not being represented by Assad and also are obviously in direct juxtaposition to the ISIL boogeyman. So we have an example here, obviously, of triangular diplomacy and warfare being laid out ahead of time. So thank you, Barry, for giving us a heads up on that, because this is what we're going to have is a three-way struggle. Now also. Let's see. He does say that he's going to have consultations with Congress as this continues and as it evolves. He made it a very big point to say that although these are tactical moves that are going on in the region, that they do not have a grand strategy regarding this. He made that point several times, actually. So do I buy that? Not for a moment. But anyway, in this particular grouping of comments, he also touches back on the Ukraine, and says that this is, or quote, this is not a homegrown indigenous uprising in the Ukraine. He also says that, and quote again, there's deep Russian involvement.
Probably.
And that, quote, sanctions have been effective. I am dumbfounded by that one still. That's almost like saying, a school lunch program is generally run just about as well as your finest restaurant. Find it for me, please.
Yeah.
I don't know. If you want to touch on any of this stuff, Dylan, I'm sorry. I keep rambling. So please, jump in.
If my mic wasn't muted when I was laughing, that's really all I got.
That's fine.
It's sad and funny that people buy this.
And the comedy cavalcade continues because now, and I don't know which reporter it was. I really should have made a note of him, but I was so stunned by the fact that anybody even bothered to mention, aren't you a little worried about the expansion of powers being, given to the executive branch or being, seized by the executive branch, as your critics state, and all that kind of good stuff? Aren't you concerned about that? See,
how well did he dodge it?
Well, he dodged it awfully well, I thought. He did interject some interesting little tidbits there that kind of, made me scratch my head. A
lot of what he says makes me scratch my head.
Oh, yeah, very much like your average Palobus chimp at the zoo. I am scratching my head all the time when I see these guys speak. But, okay, he says that it's his sacred duty as the commander-in-chief to defend the American people. Now, I should mute up and laugh here. That's a quote, by the way.
That's a quote?
Yeah, that's a quote.
That's beautiful.
Pull the video up, and if you can't extract that quote, I'm telling you, it happened on the live press conference.
Oh my God.
Okay. Of course, we go into, that he has to build this international coalition. And
instead of an international order?
For the region. For the region. See, it's only regional. It's not worldwide. It's just an international coalition. In order to deal with all these problems in the region, I say again, just, remember the phrase, the coalition of the willing.
Well, some people have said that there's going to be 3 unions formed, the North American, the Asian, and the European, just like the European.
So it's already basically been done. There's also the African Union, et cetera, et cetera. And all of these, unions are part of the grand scheme, obviously, and, et cetera, et cetera. And financially, a lot of this stuff has already been done. The integration of currencies, the breakdown of, more than just the physical borders has already been done. I mean, look at NAFTA, look at GATT, look at the, blah, 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 blah. It's on and on and on. And this is happening in slow motion, and in some cases a little bit quicker a pace than some of us really believed would ever be possible. But it is happening, and that's a whole other rabbit hole. So, let's see. And this was kind of interesting, too, because thrown out at this point was something that I didn't quite fully understand, but, they started talking about. He was being asked about weapons having been U.S. weapons. Having been, gee, it seems as though ISIL has picked up a bunch of U.S. resources and weaponry and et cetera, et cetera. What about that? Really nice, and I want to give credit to Barry where it is due. I want to say that you dodged the question very well, Mr. Alleged President. You did. It was really, really kind of artful, actually. Over and over mentioning the coalition narrative, that definition of how it is you're going to handle all this, and kind of just, ISIL has no vision or ideology beyond violence and slaughter. I found that fascinating as well. That's a quote, by the way, that there's no vision or ideology beyond violence and slaughter. Okay? So then he, of course, touched on the possibility of military action in the Ukraine, stating that we're not going to do that because obviously the sanctions are so effective. We're not taking military action.
How long do you give, Chuck? How long do you give before that changes?
Well, it depends on how long they want to perpetuate the myth that Russia is isolated by these so-called sanctions, that these financial, burdens that were supposedly put on this selective few in their, in their coalition, in their federation, I should say. It's kind of interesting to note that. Jeez, hold on just a second here. It's kind of interesting to note that that they actually think these sanctions are effective. So I don't know what to say about all that. Okay, let's see now. Of course, after the Russia is isolated, we have to bring up NATO and how our responsibilities under Article 5 of the Charter are to defend, one another as NATO nations. And, this is the way our treaty responsibilities run, et cetera, et cetera. And, of course, this is priming of the pump to do what? Well, to introduce the idea that we may have to go in some limited way, just like we're going in some limited way into so many other places militarily, with some other coalition of the willing, probably. But that's my commentary. That's not Obama's supposition here. And then I gotta say that he almost walked away from the podium. Okay, and I thought, oh, good, this is over with. But no such mercy on Ochelli here. No such mercy at all, because somebody shouted out something about immigration, so of course he had to walk back over to the podium. Hey, brace yourselves for the executive orders is all I can say, because that's pretty much what he was saying, is that Congress has not acted. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, I got a pen. You got Congress, I got a pen. So, I don't know if anybody remembers that from I think it was last year or earlier this year. I don't remember which, but I was kind of stunned by that sort of defiant, listen, I'll just, use my pen if I don't get what I want. But, okay. He also said, and here's a quote which cracked me up, fewer folks are coming over regarding the illegal aliens which are entering into the country. I find that interesting, and he's talking about the success of the border control and, of course, the changes in policy that they're making. But
what changes?
Yeah, well, there's been a few changes. A lot of them have been told to stand down in certain areas and things like that. I'm aware of that. So, I guess if you don't count the illegals coming over the border, they don't exist, right? So, if you don't attempt to apprehend them, he did make a point that apprehensions are down. And, again, if you're ordered not to apprehend people and you don't apprehend them, it's kind of...
Yeah, they would be down.
Yeah, again, just like if you don't count unemployed people, if unemployed people are not counted, based on the fact that they have no jobs, but are counted as being on unemployment, and then you don't give extensions and people go off unemployment and they still don't have jobs, well, they don't count. They're not really unemployed, are they? But we all know how this game works, right?
Sadly.
So, he said that the issue has, quote, kept us busy as well. I bet it has. And he touched upon the whole thing with the kids, which I have very mixed feelings about that whole thing. And I got to say that, as here we go, I'm gonna borrow from Hitler for a second. As a human being and a father, and you may question as to whether I am either, but go right ahead. The thing is,
you're gonna get a lot of mail with that comment.
That's fine. You know what kind of mail I get anyway. If you want to touch on that in a little bit, I will. I just want to drop the last little, bit of rhetoric regarding this mainstream excursion for my mind that I did today, and I did not enjoy it, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. See, that's why I keep you around. You're a glutton for punishment.
You know what? Thank you, Dylan, because nobody else ever says stuff like that to me, and you're just dead on. See, there you got your point straight and dead on and concise in less than 2 seconds. Thank you. That's what you needed to do last week. Okay. All right. 250 Syrians with the Death March. How many times are they going to play as this blurry piece of video? We're looking at the legs walking. We're looking at the alleged pile of bodies. And, you got to give them this. At least the technology is not so smooth that you think it's special effects wizardry. Okay. I'm not saying that that's fake. What I'm saying is that it's a very useful piece of the narrative. There are individuals which are, slaughtered in mass in various countries that you will never hear about. Coincidentally, a lot of them are on the dark continent of Africa. And, why do we even focus on the genocides that go on there on a constant basis? Well, Answer is we don't. Very little news ever makes it out of there unless there's a massive, Ebola strain or the overthrow of some particular government, which, coincidentally doesn't want to participate in the whole central banking system. But
that's probably just a coincidence.
I'm sure it is. I am so sure it is. Hey. All right. Now I'm going to throw aside my mainstream notes because...
Well, that was interesting.
And just understand something here. If I take notes, I don't read everything either. I turn around and just really pare down what I'm doing to the very basic and necessary elements of what I think are, are salient here regarding the performances of the, of these selected meat puppets that happen to be beamed via mainstream media.
Chuck,
yes,
I'm glad you kept those short because I don't know how long I would have lasted listening to those notes.
Yeah, I know it, and that's the scary part with me, right? There's always more in my notes. So, on to other subjects.
Thank God.
Don't thank God too quickly because I'm going to get on you about that debate last week now.
You got on me after the show.
No. I waited till the next day. I wanted to digest the whole thing and let it go.
Yeah, I digested it too.
I'm sure you did. I mean...
not my proudest moment at all.
Did you get any feedback from it, Dylan?
Only from you.
Only from me. That's good.
Yep. Yeah, that's good. I didn't need to hear any more about it.
Well, and I wasn't rough on you. Let's not.
No, you weren't.
That I was, yelling at you and oh my God, how could you? I didn't do that. I said
no, but I kind of feel bad.
Well, but you felt bad before I said word one. Let's be honest.
I know, but yeah, I did, but still.
And look, let's get down to it. I am not. Almost made a slip there. I am not an expert on debates. I do enjoy, witnessing them when you have two articulate individuals who are very much married to their particular positions. And it is very interesting to hear sometimes what people represent as facts and how many factoids are twisted by certain individuals. And you can usually tell who is actually telling you the gospel truth. Yes, I used the word gospel truth regarding the issue based on their tactics in a lot of cases. Now, I found it interesting, and I know you had a little bit of a vapor lock there, and we all do that. What you said was a brain fart. Same thing, regarding your facts and things. And you have positions that are much more, complex than you represented. So I had this feeling that, first of all, you were tired. But secondly, when you are debating someone, you have to be at least somewhat skilled when it comes to two things, there's a great deal more to it to be a serious, well-rounded person when it comes to these kind of debates. But in reality, if you're able to do two things effectively, you will survive at the debate and at least score some points. And these two things are this: you have to be able to articulate your position in an easily understood way, for the listener, and strong, okay? In other words, backed by facts, backed by examples, backed by, various things that are sort of scientifically, able to be recreated one way or another. Any type of information doesn't have to be scientific in nature exactly, but you catch the drift of my meaning here.
Yes.
So that's one thing. The other thing, which is sometimes more important than even being able to articulate your own position, is being able to counterpunch. And I know that my structure for you threw you off.
Yeah, it definitely did, but that's not entirely your fault either.
Well, see, but I gave you guys a very level playing field. I didn't discuss the issues. I didn't give you guys the questions. You guys both came in blind, okay? And you had no idea where I was going, even structure-wise, so each of you had to, very quickly assess, pick your spot, and strike. There was no time for you guys to really prepare, to even, get a heads up. It wasn't there.
No, if we get a second round in, I'm more prepared this time.
Well, see, but that was that was really the reason why I did it that way, though, is so I could maintain the level playing field.
Right.
Let me just say for the record, I don't agree with that kid like 90% of the time. He's really fixated on what he sees as legitimate sources and things like this, and you know what it is. God, I can listen to it and I hear the echoes of Fox News coming out of this kid's mouth, which feels really strange to me, but I'm discovering that this is a little more prevalent than I thought it was. The liberal and conservative, cheerleading. It's okay. The liberal and conservative cheerleading from people in your age group, the younger millennial age group, is definitely, there for those who aren't apathetic. And really, you're more of a rarity than I'd like you to be. Regarding your ability to, look at these things a little more objectively, to not necessarily buy everything you're told, and to think critically. And I really wish that you had utilized some of that, because I've had private conversations with you where you weren't, on the spot, but you also weren't prepared. And you've articulated points where I've said, you know what, that's a really good point. And, I was impressed by some of the points that you bring up totally off the cuff. You're not reading them. You're just pulling them out of your mind's eye, if you will. And I really wondered exactly what made you falter with Colton there.
I think it was more the fact, not even the structure. I think it was more the fact that I was just tired that day. Yeah, everyone has their rough days. I think that was mine.
Yeah, I understand, but I really wish that it did not go that way. And I felt especially bad, when I brought up the whole JFK thing, and you said, "Well, you taught me that," and I said, "Oh man, just because I said it, I never tell you." And you can attest to this for anybody listening. I don't tell you to believe me.
No, you don't.
Look, this is what I know, and I guarantee you can verify it if you look. So I tell everybody to verify what I say, And that's the kind of point I was hoping to get from you about that, and the various other subjects. Now, I don't think it's a complete loss, but in overall, if you had to choose a winner, that kid got it that day.
Yeah, he did.
I'm
gonna have to give you the MP3 for the one we did before that, because that's one of my more proud moments.
Well, you know what? I don't even want to do that, and I'll tell you why. Because I'd rather be really fresh on this, and not have any clue about where he's going. Although he was stacking his rhetoric very nicely and continuing to, he would answer the question, answer the subject, and then begin to cascade into new areas. So I give him that, and I had to cut him off a few times, which he might have not been too happy about, but I wasn't going to just let somebody pontificate without any sort of boundary. I wasn't going to let you do that either. So, it was a matter of being level and trying to be a fair arbiter there. And so I tried. And you know what? Just for the listeners' knowledge, we did invite Colton to come back this week, and he said that he didn't want to. I'm not clear on the reasons. I don't know if we'll be able to get a part 2, but I am considering doing further debates, not just with Dylan, with some other people, which I discussed with you off the air. And I think I have some interesting debate subjects and participants in mind, I would say.
Well, I definitely want to get you on a debate series.
Yeah, I would only, I would do it, but I would only do it regarding certain subjects. And because I don't feel competent enough to represent a side in a lot of these discussions. I mean, if you want an overall sort of global freeform debate, I'll try it. I don't promise you that you'll get much better a result than I got from you, but but we shall see. And I do like to run my mouth, so at the very least, it should be somewhat entertaining.
Well, Chuck, whenever you have free, I will try to get Colton back to do this again.
Well, I will gladly do it on my show anytime. Except for obviously I booked the Tuesday nights to Liberty Beacon, but we could do a sort of a redacted kind of shortened debate we could do in the second hour, because I usually give the first hour to Roger Landry. This week I didn't. We stuck with the one individual there, which I thought was pretty interesting. I don't know if you heard all that, but
no, I was really getting thrown around Tuesday.
Well, yeah, and look, and on a personal note, you went to the beach today, so that's cool.
Yeah, yeah, it was nice to get out of it to go.
Absolutely. So, look, out of sheer curiosity, what do you got planned for your next couple of shows? By the way,
I've got Crumpton coming on either Sunday or Wednesday.
Oh, Daniel Lewis Crumpton.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I got him booked. I had somebody else booked, but they canceled on me. I didn't do my show yesterday.
Oh boy. Well,
I didn't know what was going to be going on. To tell the truth, I didn't know what I would be doing when I was supposed to do the show.
I hear you. That happens to me a lot, and sometimes I throw things together in the last 15 minutes, which the quality of my work probably shows. But
your shows are always entertaining.
You know what? I try. I really do try to make it at least an interesting, excursion into theater of the mind, which is, one of those things that I try to adhere to at all times. Because, look, if we don't make it somewhat interesting, if I just sit here and read off a bunch of facts and figures, that's one thing, and that will appeal to some. But I don't think I'll keep listeners very long at all, regardless of how they feel about the facts and figures, So, of course, it's kind of interesting. I also shared some of the feedback I get from you, from the listeners, which is funny. Funny stuff.
Yeah, it was funny. I was kind of baffled when I saw some of the stuff.
Yeah, well, that's been a limited privilege, too, because I keep threatening to do a show where I'm just going to do, like, listener mail and listener messages. But man, I don't know if I have the stomach for it to do it for 2 hours.
I'm telling you, yeah, that would be your highest rated show. I'm telling you now.
See, but only if I could get some of these people to call in, because I really want them to, because there is some serious passion in some of these messages.
But they never will.
No, I can't. I don't know why it is. I can't get them to do it, but it's some funny stuff. I am also planning, by the way, just so everybody knows, I'm definitely trying to do something special, because I will be on the air, for the 13th anniversary of 9/11, and I'm trying to do something special. We'll see how it goes. Some interesting name guests will definitely be on there. Trying for a bunch of different things, and who knows, that might be one of my better ones, depending. And if I get what I want done, Dylan, I want you to jump on there for a little bit too. Don't forget.
Oh, definitely.
So, what are you going to go over with Crumpton, by the way, or are you just going to kind of let it go the way it goes?
I think I'm going to let it go the way it goes until I get a feel for what he's an expert with.
Well, you know what? I would definitely read his stuff at Zen in the Car.
I've read a lot of his stuff, but it's also stuff that I don't know where to go with.
Well, but see, that's the great thing about him. Really, is he can take you there one way or another, as long as you can sort of follow what he's saying, and he's actually constructs what he's saying. Really interesting presentations that just came out of virtually nothing. We had a basic idea when we went on the air, and we ended up with what I think were very compelling sort of and sensible, organized presentations. So it might be a little different from some of your guests, and not quite as scatterbrained as I am.
Hey, Chuck, I'm Sorry if you can pick up the background noise. My family's being really loud.
No, it's not too bad. I mean, we got a couple of crashes in there during the podcast so far, but, it is live, man. That's the way it goes, so what are you going to do? So, let me ask you this. You did some interesting shows recently. You did the one with Ralph Epperson, which was kind of similar to what was, I guess, Vince's last broadcast on here regarding the Jesse James subject. What did you think of that?
That was a really informative one as well.
Right. And, another quick thing, by the way, since you are listening to UCY.TV, I do have the phone lines open. So 718-717-8296 if you want to join in one way or another, you're more than welcome to. Also, if you're on my Skype contact list, you can just ring me and I will drop you right on the air. No screening, no discussion. You may not stay on the air, but we shall see. So, now that is out of the way, and of course, like I said before, I would definitely suggest that you go to the UCY.TV/TOE page, because there's chatters there which I'm not able to visually follow while I'm on the show, but they are live there while the show is being broadcast also. So there you go. And hi to everybody in chat. I do appreciate that you're listening. It's just that, as I said before, it's actually just a physical problem for me to follow that and also keep track of messages and make sure the Skype is connected and everything else during the show. So I apologize as always, but always your voice is welcome if you want to call in, either way. Okay. So, so you had a cancellation on a show. You had Epperson on recently. You're going to have Crumpton on. I'll give you a couple of hints about Crumpton, though, is if you get him discussing, the world at large and spirituality, it's definitely a fertile subject with him. There's many more dimensions to the man, though. So you would probably discover stuff that I didn't.
Well, I hope so. I hope to get at 3 or 4 shows with him, at least.
Yeah, well, definitely, I would try for that. He's been on 2 full shows with me and 1 half the show, and I just feel really privileged to have had him on, because he's just one of these guys that I appreciate just where he's coming from, and the way he lays things out is just excellent. One of the best authors, and one of the guys that I did not have any sort of expectation about when I brought him on the first time, was actually Vince Easley that put me in touch with him. So I had no sort of clue outside of a couple of things I read about his book really quickly, and I skimmed a few of his articles the first time I brought him on, and kind of took a risk there. And I got to say, certainly glad I did. So definitely one of the more enjoyable shows I've done. With somebody who I didn't know exactly what they were going to talk about to begin with. I didn't have the agenda set in stone. So, now let's get on to a couple of other interesting things, because I am wondering also how you see this whole Ferguson thing. I've spent a lot of time talking about this off the air on other people's radio shows. I generally have mentioned it on mine. And I have an odd perspective, apparently, about it, because I just don't want to buy into the accepted mechanism for dividing us all. And, but I do see the problems here, and I see the mainstream seizing upon it and using it for its own agenda, and, and doing the whole straw man thing as
Chuck,
always. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember when it first started, and you said, I'm scared when I start agreeing with them?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I said too. Is that I got really nervous the moment I heard CNN talking heads and MSNBC talking heads and even Fox talking heads using the term militarized police. This was something that was pretty much a sort of a taboo expression in the mainstream up until very recently, to my knowledge anyway. I mean, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's a little strange.
Well, and it almost seemed as though they were supporting what we have been talking about for a long time, those of us in the fringes of whatever's whatever and never land out here. It seemed as though they were sympathizing with our position. They were saying that something is wrong here. I mean, even during the nights of unrest, we saw a CNN reporter repeatedly saying something is wrong with this picture when a sniper is out here on top of an armored vehicle during what is ostensibly a peaceful protest. And, of course, you get your typical line of individuals that I call them provocateurs of all sorts, every stripe you can possibly imagine. And in addition, the usual suspects, let's just say, the Malik Shabazes of the world, the Al Sharptons of the world, and, of course, a couple of other unnamed guys who just happen to randomly throw bottles of whatever into crowds of police that are standing on guard and in riot gear. Thank you very much. This is all very typical as well. But how do you see this? And even more importantly, how is it that people your age are seeing this? Because it occurs to me that there is a difference regarding the rhetoric of race in your generation, as compared to mine and as compared to previous generations. I don't think it's the key subject that elicits this kind of intense response that it once did. And it seems as though, to your generation's credit, it doesn't seem to be as prevalent. I mean, what do you think about that?
It's really just a sign of times, I think.
Well, I mean, do you agree with that assertion from me that it has changed? It's not the that trigger point issue, that explosive issue that everybody is waiting for the tinderbox to be lit. As far as your generation goes, it's not quite the big thing that it used to be, let's just say.
No, it's not, and I think that's a good thing. I think your assertion is correct in that sense. I still think it's a big thing, but not as big.
Yeah, see, that's the funny thing is that, this is the last gasp of that, I think, because somehow or other, people your age, although I've got plenty of criticisms for people your age.
So do I, trust me.
This is one of those things where I just got to say, collectively they generally deserve a pat on the back because, the politics and the vile nature of racism is not prevalent. In the population in general, I would say, in your age group. So, this is part of the evolution we all wanted. Not quite the revolution we wanted, but the evolution we wanted, at least in part.
I think it's the only pat on the back we get, or one of the very few.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I mean,
very few.
Maybe very few. There's been an adaptive nature to your generation, which, previously would have been unthinkable, regarding the technology and how it has, sort of become, once again, I hate to use the word a second time in this broadcast, but the way that technological advances have become extremely ubiquitous in the society and have become, not only something that is tenable to your generation, but something that is completely part of it, actually, part and parcel of the entire social mechanism. Now, that has its double-edged nature, of course.
Everything does.
Yeah, well, see, and there you go. You're being very fair-minded about it. Most things of consequence do have, double edges that cut more than one direction. Technology is a great thing. It allows us to connect. It allows us to do stuff like this radio show and to share our ideas in an instant around the globe. Yes, yes, yes. But it has also served for human beings to stop, say, carrying their knowledge in their own heads. And therefore, it leaves them even more open to manipulation. And in addition, you have the surrogate life, the surrogate life
That's not bad, Chuck. That's one trip up in an hour.
Yeah, actually, I'm doing pretty good. You're going to curse me now. I'm going to have like 5. I usually only have 3, but you probably just gave me 2 more. Thanks. You know, it's okay, though. The thing is, though, that, you know, the surrogacy that is involved in living your life on the internet, living your life through your cell phone, living your life through your, you know, what I always say is the fondle slab of choice, because a cell phone, a tablet, you know, your new TV that's portable that happens to go in your pocket, whatever it is, the bottom line, and boy, am I dating myself by saying stuff like that. The bottom line is your fondle slab of choice definitely has a lot more to do with your life, it seems, you know, on a real day-to-day basis, and not necessarily for you, but, I mean, you see among your own contemporaries that this is true, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think too prevalent, actually.
Yeah, I mean, well, how do you feel about that, being that, you know, look, we could argue about the level of awake you are, but you are a lot more awake, you know, in your own generational space than most. So how do you view that, though, when you see your contemporaries really investing themselves into this?
Don't really have an opinion.
It's eating time, boys.
I'm on Skype.
So you don't think it's a good thing or a bad thing, necessarily?
No, Chuck, I'll be back.
No problem. You know, I do find that interesting because, after all, you know, when you're looking at a guy who, you know, is like Dylan, is more in the vein of, like, what it is that we talk about, and I do say we very loosely because, after all, you know, I hate to group myself in with too many people, but those of us that say challenge the system and challenge the narratives and challenge the authoritarian vision as it seems to be presented to us on a constant, you know, when you see a young guy like this, who is also engaged in this type of research and realism, you know, we applaud it, but at the same time, you know, look, the apathy still remains. You can't shake it, you know, overnight, that's for sure, and it's not going to be something that I'm going to dislodge from real quickly. None of us is perfect, too. That's another thing that, another illusion that sometimes people get about individuals that are talking about all these different issues. You know, well, here, I'll just give you my admission for the week. You know, after all, it wasn't very long ago, and I do mean very, very recently, while I was doing this show, I actually had to go and buy myself a package of Chocodiles because, you know, it was just one of those things that I had not seen since my boyhood days, and yeah, I ate them. So, you know, and I know the GMO crap and the garbage and the, you know, HFC and whatever else, we know, you know, HFS, not HFC, but we know what it is. We know the, you know, the packaging, and the food is not real food, and gee, isn't it, you know, back to the Matrix again, because after all, you could have this nutrient paste, which isn't very appealing, but of course, if you're in the Matrix, they tell you it's a steak, therefore it's a steak, so they tell me it's a baked good, therefore it's a baked good, they tell me it's chocolate, therefore it's chocolate, and meanwhile, all they're doing is feeding me debilitating chemicals, and I readily accept them. Well, yeah, I get that, and I try to resist that, but again, nobody's perfect, and I don't know too many people that, regardless of their level of awareness, don't do something now and then, or even on a daily basis, that is not exactly all that, well, I hate to use this term, but crunchy or whatever. You know, they don't necessarily you know, fight the system at all times. Some people still, you know, shop at Walmart, or still need to eat the cheaper non-food food that they do. They sometimes don't want to look up at the chemtrails, and occasionally even defend, you know, mainstream ideals, and participate in, you know, some of the voluntary brainwashing that occurs in the stream out there. And look, it's just one of those things. We're all human. Nobody's going to be perfect. But we do try and resist. At least I do. And I know that most of the people I associate with that are occupying themselves with this particular type of stuff are doing that as well. So really quickly, and I always forget to mention this, but when you go to the Ochelli Effect Facebook page, which there is a Facebook page for it, I'm not the only contributor to it. You have Kimberly's on there. You have Maria Heller, the Mouth That Roars, very graciously agreed to be an administrator on my page. Also, Suzanne Posel. So you see lots and lots of those Occupy corporatism and U.S. independent articles. We definitely get out a variety of information, and these perspectives are not necessarily all in line with each other, but they seem to be very thought-provoking. And no, I don't have any male administrators on the page outside of myself. Wasn't something that I selected purposely, but it just kind of happened that way. Seems as though it just worked out better. I had a couple of male administrators at one point, and it just didn't go well. So also, as I continue on with the show and I try and change things up and make things different, like I said before, I'm definitely going to try and stick to the Saturday night interviews, whereas guests stick to their, engagements. Tuesday will remain at the Liberty Beacon night. And Thursday is, something that I'm playing with here, and I'm thinking about going to a debate kind of format and seeing what I can do regarding, varying sides of issues. And I don't mean necessarily, I'm going to just find somebody who is, mainstream, all in line with the the official narratives regarding historical or current events, and therefore give an alternative person that I think is just representative of our entire viewpoint. I actually find it interesting when two different alternative viewpoints are confronted with one another, because sometimes they sort each other out in a very interesting way. Going to try to avoid bringing on the bully type debaters, and I may abandon the concept. I'm not sure, because I don't know if I can actually create a stable of individuals to perpetuate that on a consistent basis. I'm going to give it a shot, that's for sure. And who knows how long the computer will even hold up, because I am now actually down to my last piece of equipment for broadcast. So we shall see how long that persists as well, because after all, if I can't get on, I'm not going to get out there. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm definitely going to keep on trying. And I do appreciate all you guys who are listening to me and have listened to the varying things that I've done over time. Despite the backlash suffered from the whole let's bring on the guy from the Church of Satan deal, I got to say that that to me was just sort of a journalistic exploration, because I really wanted to give one of those guys a chance to speak, because quite often they're lumped in with the wrong crowd. So if you're gonna hate somebody, hate them for a real reason. And I obviously disagree with them. I don't believe that any individual is their own God. I think that all of us collectively are, and that goes more to my own personal belief system. I think that all living things are interconnected, and that our spiritual responsibility to one another and to all living things is omnipresent. Now, that may sound somewhat Native American, but that's not where I derived it from. But that's a topic for another show, isn't it? So, meanwhile, the Liberty Beacon thing is interesting, because that has given me a variety of individuals, from stand-up comedians to journalists. There we go, trip on the tongue too, to journalists and activists. So that's been interesting, not to mention people that are administrating and trying to create electronic media to further the truth, to further the reality which we all see. And again, by the way, you guys can jump in on the phone lines if you like at 718-717-8296, and you can bring up anything you want, and we can try and discuss it here in the last little bit of the show. I have no idea if Dylan will make it back in. Had nothing else planned, so here we go. Now, on other notes, by the way, I do really have a lot more to say about this whole ISIL deal, and I'm not even going to bother with the paper notes. It just I don't know why it is I can't remove myself from the idea that this is just entirely manufactured from the outset, that this was the plan all along to keep us continuously engaged in brushfire warfare, in combating the so-called enemy, and to make sure that we keep certain areas stable and certain areas unstable in the Middle East for various gains of corporate entities. I'm sure nobody disagrees with me that is listening to me about that, but the fact is, I wonder why there is not a greater outcry sometimes against this kind of stuff. I don't see the great mass outcry. I mean, is it because the body count is not high enough? And the ramping up now, look, it wasn't good enough to have the beheading of a journalist and kidnapping and everything else like this. That wasn't good enough. Now we have to give you mass executions. We have to give you, piecemeal genocide in order for people to get behind the idea that, once again, we need to involve ourselves into one of these excursions into a Middle Eastern country, which we never left anyway, by the way, and continue to be a thorn in the side of the entire region. And to what end? This is the problem, of course. This is not representative of what I want. This is not representative of what most people want that I know. This is not representative, I'm sure, of anybody listening to me. This is not how we want the world to view us, as the continuous antagonist in every single, religious-based and social, societal-based problem where we have populations that are at war with one another for all of their different moral reasons, whether they be religious or they be political or whatever else, but mostly stuff that doesn't involve us. Why are we involving ourselves in it? Is it just the continuation of the American empire as it exists because of the, constant presence, the omnipresent bases throughout the world? I mean, I do believe very much so that we are in over 160 other countries, besides ourselves, with these bases and, platforms from which we're supposed to be able to launch and to deal with things. I mean, after all, with our economic woes as they are, even if you believe in the false left-right paradigm, why isn't there more of an outcry, from the citizenry to say that, listen, we don't have the money for this. What is the point of continuing to have bases in countries where our military is not, a requisite a requisite entity that is, necessary toward keeping the peace in a particular region? Or there is no purpose for the majority of these bases. There is no purpose for the majority of the assets. Why is it that we have all of this stuff that we can dump over into the local police departments as surplus? Well, because they're making too much. We're not even destroying enough vehicles to account for, the contracts, right? And it's not surplus. It's still being manufactured. So what is the, it can't be surplus if it isn't like extra. It's being forced into the surplus category as opposed to being surplus by happenstance, And doesn't this all sort of coalesce together to give you an idea that something is very, very wrong, and that and that you're being lied to? And I find it interesting. The people that believe, the people that place their faith in this kind of behavior, that think that the American empire is a good thing, that think that we have a moral duty to, and excuse me, I would normally mute up when I need to cough, but don't want to give you dead air. The thing is that, that regardless of what it is that you believe is the moral sort of objective of any of this action, don't you think that at some point there would be an outcry that some of it is unnecessary, that some of this continuous investment in this crap is unnecessary? Well, of course not, because bankers want to make their money and people want to control what they want to control, and this is a control mechanism, and et cetera, et cetera. But where does that leave us sitting here, where we have this massive real unemployment problem, way beyond the statistical meme that exists. We have a great deal of social problems, way beyond the almost arcane idea of racism at this point. Which I'm not saying that there is no racism, by the way. I'm simply saying that it is the very, very convenient tool of those that want to make sure that we remain divided, because after all, if we all stood up at the same time and simply said no once, the entire thing would collapse, wouldn't it? Because after all, it is all sort of the foundation of the will to power regarding the oligarchy has a lot to do with our willingness to accept our slavery. And this is something that is just as obvious as that rising sun in the morning. It's as obvious as the blue sky over your head or the chemtrails in it. Even though there's still people that say those things don't exist either.
Hey, Chuck, I'm sorry, I'm back.
No, not a problem, Dylan. I was just kind of vamping off into different directions here and talking about the world at large. And really the reason is because, look, that's the way I see it. And I was getting more into you and your contemporaries because we often talk about the apathy that is inherent in your age group, right? And sadly, even though you're a more awake individual, look, I ask you, what do you think about the, you take an apathetic position regarding that? I mean, you don't think it affects the health, let's just say, of the entire millennial group of individuals that's coming up now?
I think it could, and I think it even might, but I don't know enough about it. So
the idea that social interaction, real, physical, direct social interaction, has at this point been discouraged in favor of surrogate. Well, I mean, honestly, think about it. How many people, don't leave their homes, sit in their homes, and pretty much interact only on the internet, and don't actually venture out to do things anymore? I mean, there's a very large class of individuals, especially in the younger generations at this point, that are in this position, that they pretty much live their social lives vicariously on the internet through their avatars. I mean, this is part of the reality right now. Or do you disagree?
No, I agree with that, and sorry, having another one of those moments.
No problem. But the thing is that it's kind of counterproductive when it comes to the fact that human beings are social creatures. They're meant to interact.
I agree.
So you have this artificial interaction, which is prevalent, among many groups of individuals. It is not restricted to simply the millennial age group. I mean, there are 50-year-old guys that don't leave their house anymore. The thing is that, to me, though, it's becoming more acceptable in your age group than, say, it would be in mine or even in ones afterwards, because I'm more one of those Generation X guys, but even in Generation Y and et cetera, and even before me and all that, it's not quite completely acceptable. But I see no sort of, onus placed on that type of behavior among your generation. I mean, am I wrong?
No, I think you're mostly correct. But to say that it's been almost entirely, face-to-face contact has been almost entirely gotten rid of, I gotta disagree there.
Well, you don't think that it's in the process of being completely abolished almost?
In the process, yes, I agree. But you made it sound like it's already there.
Well, in a sense it is.
In a sense, but not all the way. We're not all the way there.
No, but it's no longer encouraged. Nobody ever tells you to go out and meet people anywhere, just randomly meet people. I don't see that happening anymore.
I don't either.
You don't have these mass sort of public functions that you used to have, because you can get together and share your ideas and look at pictures of people and even watch videos of people all around the world through all of these different, mechanisms now. So you don't even have to say go to another city to talk to 5 people in that city. You don't have to, you don't have to go to another country to pretty much be present at events in that country anymore. I mean, everything can be pretty much streamed directly into, like I say, that device again.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
And, and how many people aren't, doing the, like I said, those public gatherings, everything is down, and I know part of that is a financial consideration, but even when you have free public gatherings, attendance is lower than it ever was. It seems to me. I mean, again, I may be wrong, but I mean, this is what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing a turn away from what is a natural state of being among people, which is that we are meant to interact with one another and to, and to exchange ideas and, breathe the same air and be in the same space and, every once in a while get into a fist fight and whatever else. But the thing is, this interaction, I think, is absolutely essential to the health of the human species.
I agree.
And I think it's being discouraged and almost made to be non-existent by the availability, the much easier availability of the technology, the much more acceptable use of the technology as a socialization mechanism. That's what I'm saying, and I see among your generation there is absolutely no hesitation to completely involve yourselves in that world, as opposed to ever stepping out. And realize I'm not trying to criticize you directly, because you have your reasons as to why this is really a great gift for you,
Mm-hmm.
And it is a great gift for some, but for others, doesn't it become a prison?
Yeah, people abuse it.
Well, as with most things of consequence, people do abuse it. But I see no sort of governor over that anymore. There's no sort of restriction on it anymore. There's no sort of, like I said, there's no sort of problem with conducting your entire social life vicariously on the internet.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, I mean, don't you think that in the long run that becomes, detrimental the more that becomes prevalent?
Mm-hmm. The more, but I think it's still in the early stages.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I guess it is a matter of perspective. Things do appear to be moving faster to those of us who are older. In my day, we didn't have... Yeah, I get it, but at the same time, sometimes you need to listen to those older men, and I listen to older people all the time because, as dumb as some of them are, they usually have pearls of wisdom, somewhere among even the most ridiculous sounding individual usually has a pearl of wisdom for you. And
yeah, everyone does.
Pearls of wisdom are much more valuable than their namesake in the physical world, in my opinion. So I often take time to do stuff like that. But anyhow, what we didn't get to, by the way, Dylan, is exactly when your show is airing over there at Shake and Wake Radio.
There has been a time change for some of my shows. Wednesdays will be 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. Saturdays 5 to 7 Eastern.
Ah, okay. Well, that's interesting. And outside of Crumpton coming up, what else do you have coming up on The Truth Speaks?
Not a whole lot at this point. I'm trying to get more people to join me, but I'm kind of stuck for guests right now.
Really? Well,
yeah.
You got to just kind of explore and ask, in mass, and you'll pick them up sometimes. I have that struggle on occasion too. Usually it's just the uncooperative guest who tells me they can make it for 3 weeks, and then they bail on me at the last minute. So
yeah, I know that one too.
Yeah, and I mean you've been part of those conversations with me a couple of times. So
Yep, and I filled in for some of the time.
Yeah, you did. You did a few times. That's true, and I do appreciate it, by the way, because
no problem.
At least it gave me a sounding board, even when I had absolutely nothing on my mind that day. And it was just like, well, let's go somewhere with it.
No problem, Chuck. I enjoy coming on.
Yeah, and I appreciate you. Believe me, I do. I got one other question for you, because I am trying to assemble this 9/11 thing, right?
Yeah.
Now, I have had mixed feelings about what to do with it, because I'm in contact with enough people that I can give a seriously diverse set of views, right? And I'm trying to think exactly. I mean, I'm wondering if you have any sort of out-of-the-box sort of suggestions, like what I should feature on there. Definitely going to have, like right now so far, let's just say, to make generalizations, I have a couple of broadcasters lined up. I have, which have their own opinions regarding the events of 9/11, the cover-up, etc. I have somebody coming on from architects and engineers. I have somebody coming on from pilots. I haven't quite figured out where else to go with it. I mean, what do you think?
Oh, I could give this. I've already given you the one suggestion, but Fetzer.
Fetzer.
You said you want diverse views.
Yeah, I know, but now I got to sigh at you, man. Come on. All right. Be serious for a minute, okay? I know you think that's funny, and,
Sorry, couldn't resist.
It's okay. It's okay. I get it. And yes, at one point I did do his radio show a long time ago. But, what can I say? Being a JFK guy, of course, I've run into Jim Fetzer several times. But I just... That particular tornado, I don't know if I can chase it. So we'll leave that to the imagination. Maybe I might just do it anyway. Just but I don't know if he's going to want to even try and participate for 15 minutes or something like that. I don't know if he'd even accept that invitation. But I guess that would be interesting. But I don't know. I really don't.
I'm kind of stuck too, honestly. I don't have any ideas. It really all depends on what way you want to go with it.
Well, let me ask you a question. If I told you that you had, 5 or 10 minutes to just talk about 9/11 and present your particular point of view, what would you say?
That it was the greatest deception in American history, period. And it continues to cause problems, and it continues to echo the police state. It was really the beginning of it.
Well, it was definitely the mass excuse to create what it is we're confronted with now.
Yep.
Which again, the whole Ferguson issue, has remained at the forefront for more than one reason. Oh, and you know what? I did say I was going to say something about that tape, so here we go. There was a great deal that can be learned from an audio tape. Yes, I did study this regarding JFK, but let's put that aside. The Kent State shooting, in fact, if everybody remembers, there was that incident at Kent State, and I think it was 4 students were killed by National Guardsmen, and all of that. Well, utilizing the acoustical science that essentially is principally anyway the same as the same type of techniques that were brought into being for being able to have tank sonar that was functional, stuff like that. They were actually able to recreate and pinpoint where the first shots were fired, whose gun actually was used, and stuff like this during the Kent State incident. And of course, if you take a look, and I know everybody hates it when I do this, but House Select Committee on Assassinations regarding the Dictabel tape and the JFK case.
I'm watching the chat board now to see what happens.
I know, but I mean, just looking at that, everybody says, well, that's been thoroughly debunked because, what's his name, Steve Barber or whatever, found that the tape was incongruous with real time. But here's the problem. There's an order in the data which is virtually statistically impossible. They were able to recreate the shots and therefore create the characteristics which are seen in the sound waves to prove that there was not a fourth shot like the House Select Committee stated. That there was a fourth shot, but it missed, so therefore it's still Oswald who killed Kennedy, of course, although it was likely the result of a conspiracy because of that fourth shot. But no, when one actually takes the data from BBN and compares it to other tests, takes a look at the test firing, takes a look at the comparisons and the analysis, one understands that there are likely on that Dictabel tape the signs of 7 shots, not 4. And the 4-shot scenario as presented by the House Select Committee is also counterintuitive because it actually makes no sense for the chronological placement of the shots. So again, at the end of the day, they swept partial discovery into a deception, rolled it all up, and then of course the head of the House Select Committee comes out with the whole nonsensical mafia did it scenarios that he wanted to push himself, and that would be, of course, G. Robert Blakey and his co-author Dick Billings. But the House Select Committee on Assassinations ended up being a complete fiasco because it had to be a limited hangout, and the scientific evidence that was perverted and has been since batted around by various experts. I'll tell you what, if you want an overall look at the case and you want to understand the science of acoustics and how someone can take an audio recording and truly recreate an event based on the data gleaned from it, and meanwhile, Dictabelt recordings are awful, and sound actuated and everything else, which means real time is impossible on them, etc., etc. So, it took a great deal more sorting than would be required in the case of this digital representation of shots fired. But either way, if you want to look at something like that, there was a guy named Donald Thomas who wrote a book called Hear No Evil. And, he'll give you something interesting. Of course, he's a little controversial among JFK researchers because being a statistician and a scientist in general, Mr. Thomas does establish that the single bullet theory is a possibility, though highly unlikely. But it is actually physically possible to do so if you accept XYZ. However, if you've gotten a hold of the actual, medical evidence, it's incongruous once again, and the whole SPT falls apart. So, but acoustical science was brought into the spotlight there, but it's been used various times to recreate the sounds of gunshots, to recreate the nature of an explosion, to get the idea of where something originated, to get the concept of even things can be gleaned by through acoustical science. You can actually figure out the muzzle velocity, the caliber of a weapon fired, and various other interesting aspects if one does so choose to do it. So this electronic representation that was supposedly used during this interactive calling session could be extremely useful. I don't think it's a fraud, although that was batted around for a little while. It may be some sort of hoax. It doesn't seem to me as though it would be. But then again, you never know. Sometimes they hang out these little golden apples out there for you to seize upon so that you can understand how little you really truly understand the public out there once you find out that it was fabricated, etc., etc. Because after all, you do need those, appeal to authority talking heads on your alphabet soup networks to explain the world to you, don't you? Okay. So, again, I rant. But do you have anything to say about what I was just talking about, Dylan?
Not really.
Not really. See, I'm sorry. I'm overwhelming, like the Tasmanian devil style sometimes that I come out with. I got to apologize for it.
No problem. No problem.
I am trying to cram some information into my opinion occasionally, though, so it's not just all about, well, I think this and that's it. So I do try and let you guys know that there's some basis for my opinions on occasion. But sometimes I guess I go too far. So, what else is on your mind, Dylan? Anything else? Because we are approaching that magical time when that obnoxious bumper will kick in. Only about 20 minutes remaining in the broadcast, so I want to make sure I don't step on anything that you want to get out there. So, go ahead.
Not really. I was just wondering if on Sunday you could come on my show and if we could talk about James Foley. Because I really want to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, see, I'm not the best guy for that, but but if you're going to come up with a little bit of a round table on it, if you're going to have a couple of guests on it, and let us sort of discuss it together, I'll be more than happy to try and do that.
Well, I can't get any of the people in my video production class to join me because they believe it.
Well,
I don't know how they could. They're better than I am with video.
Well, but there's a reverse sort of way to do that. You could tell them, listen, show me how it is that you can authenticate this. Show me how it's real. You know what I mean? That's what I would do with them.
I'd love to see how that's real because I cannot put my finger on it.
Yeah, and just realize, I don't believe that everything is a falsified document, whether it be video, audio, or even, God help me, the government's documentation sometimes doesn't have, complete packs of lies lodged in it. Occasionally there are little nuggets of truth that you can garner.
The best lies have a nugget of truth.
You know what? Absolutely they do. The most effective ones, anyway.
Yeah, but with James Foley, that's why it's not a very good lie. There's no truth to what happened.
Yeah, see, and I don't even want to go that far personally, but I just say that video is highly suspect. Highly suspect. I wouldn't go as far as to say that the whole thing is a fabrication. It is very I'm not even going to use the word likely. It is very possible that this is authentic. That this is an authentic event. But the video...
I have enough trouble believing the video.
Yeah, the video is terrible, but the event may be true.
No, Chuck, the video is amazing. That's why it's a problem.
Well, I know, but that's my point. It's obviously no good regarding it being a legitimate documentation of what occurred, but it doesn't mean... See, here's the funny part. Sometimes, we say, well, it's a fraud, so therefore the entire story is a fraud. Sometimes they fabricate things in order to cover up part of the fraud. You know what I mean? Where it's like... What's that?
I don't think James Foley was killed.
Not at all, huh?
No, I really don't think he was at all. Because if he was killed, if he wasn't killed by beheading, why would they not show the actual method of killing? If the whole point of that video, the whole point of this killing, was to, quote-unquote, provoke the United States into a war by killing an American journalist, why not show us the actual death?
Well, but then again, have you gotten a hold of the uncut tape?
No, but even still, we're not looking at the uncut stuff. All we need to look at to question the video itself is everything about it looks like it was done in a Hollywood studio. The lighting is perfect. The sound is clear as day. There's no motion blur when the angle changes. And it's almost like they had an editor on standby.
No, I get it, and that is the problem. But let me just give you a little warning. In the past, again, going to date myself very nicely, but in the past, I have seen stuff run on the news. Okay, I'm not going to tell you which events, but there were various events. There was a very famous. All right, I'll bring up this one because this was the weirdest, probably one of the earliest cases of this kind of stuff that I just found so astounding. Is that there was a politician named R. Bud Dwyer who had blown his brains out at a press conference, right? This happened. This is a real thing. And the film had made it out to many of the networks. They had showed it to varying degrees. Some of them stopped it right when he put the gun in his mouth, all that kind of stuff. When I got my hands on an uncut version of what was filmed that day, it did not really fly well with what had been broadcast. Another indication of this, and this is a deep, dark rabbit hole, but the Columbine shooting, okay? I'm one of those people who within 2 days of the Columbine shooting, I had the raw security footage, okay? Now, the news networks showed you bits and pieces of it, of the two shooters going from place to place and what happened, and mostly what they showed you is fleeing students in that Colorado high school. But I had the uncut tape, and when you put things into context sometimes, and you have the uncut film, when you have something that hasn't been edited, hasn't been reshot or upgraded visually in some way or other, it does change your perspective a bit.
True, and I'll agree with that, Chuck, but there are some things that it's extremely difficult to fake, and it's extremely difficult to, with that video in particular, you were saying they could have upscaled it, correct?
But that's not necessarily my argument. I'm just saying that it could have been edited for broadcast, and and you haven't seen something that the complete tape could be 2 hours long for all you know.
True, but whether they edited it or not, I think is honestly irrelevant with this, because the editing work isn't what we're questioning, it's the quality that we're questioning.
Yeah, but you can hide certain things in the editing process, and there are different ways to improve the quality when you do edit it. So,
but
you can upgrade the visual images. That's a possibility.
You can upgrade the visual images, but can you upgrade the audio, the visual, and take out the motion blurs? And Hollywood can barely do something that well done.
Well, see, I disagree with that, because I've got to tell you that even in the days when, again, these things were done manually and there weren't computers to help you and to reset perspectives, etc., there were many people that were extremely skilled at doing this kind of stuff. And a lot of them had a natural skill for it. So it is possible to do this in all different ways. I mean, I've seen motion blur removed from films. I've seen various artifacts removed from films. I've seen lighting improved, based on processing.
I agree with all that, certainly. And I guess we'll have to wait for the uncut footage. But you did bring up the one thing. The video is completely suspect, and based on that video, I don't buy the story.
Yeah, if that is your only piece of evidence, then I've got a real problem going along with the, with the storyline here. That's for sure. But I don't say that I automatically know, that all I know for sure is that something's wrong. That's all I know for sure. You know what I'm saying? That's where I take things. I mean, sometimes I reserve judgment. Other times I do not. I'm not very even-tempered. I just bang. That's it. Like, for instance, and this is why I said when when Michael Baden got involved in the whole Ferguson shooting thing, I just went, oh, God, help us. Because this guy, and look, when I was on Jack Blood's show, he obviously brought up to me, some positive stuff that Baden had done. And I admit that is true, that Baden had done some positive stuff in his days. But it does not mean that this negates his role in so many different cover-ups when it came to really, big issues, when it came to, really even his incompetence in some areas. It makes me stop and wonder, as I pointed out to Jack on the show that I called into, this guy couldn't even properly orient a picture of a skull with the scalp refracted away in the 1970s, right? And he was claiming to explain, the condition, the quality, and everything else of the autopsy photos. Plus, was telling stories about how certain things had come to be, certain evidence had come to be, and everything else. Completely ignorant of the reality which we know was passed in front of him as the head of a medical panel. And then even years later at conferences, when confronted by the evidence that he had either been mistaken or been incompetent in his analysis of things because he was making assertions that were flatly false, he would, gently sort of, okay, I accept what you're saying. And then when someone sticks a microphone in his face, continue to parrot the original position, regardless of what he had been shown, to reveal to him his own either ignorance or incompetence. And that right there, those types of actions make me, at least groan when I see this guy being brought in as an authority, And it turns out that something that Cyril Wecht was saying, kind of countering what Mike Baden was saying regarding the actual, autopsy or forensic, medical forensic evidence in this case. It seemed to be silly. He said, the only way that this type of shot would have been possible is if somebody was charging or they were positioned in this way or whatever. And lo and behold, a little while later, they adopted to the storyline here from the cop's perspective that he was being charged by this kid and everything else. And you know what? I still say this, and people have said, well, if a cop is in danger, he's got to do what he's got to do. And I understand that and recognize it, but here's my problem. If an unarmed kid who had basically stolen some blunts, can be executed, and if threatening a cop is an execution worthy offense, is a capital offense in this case, something again is still wrong, so I don't know whether to accept the idea that that he had his hands in the air, or to accept the idea that he was being belligerent and menacing, to a degree that somebody had a reasonable mean to do that. I can't say for certain, and you definitely can't say it by this sort of anecdotal and incomplete evidence that is being given to you by the experts. All the evidence is not in. You don't know what the whole thing was, but still, at the end of the day, I still say that stealing blunts and being menacing is not a capital offense as far as I know. So,
in this new police state, it is.
Well,
That's scary.
Isn't that the point, Dylan? See?
I'm not I'm not as dim as I thought I was at the beginning of the show.
A lack of confidence, sir, will be one of your greatest enemies if you allow it to be. Don't forget that.
Nah, I just felt like an airhead at the beginning, honestly.
Well, what, today or at the beginning of that debate last week?
Both.
That was a little prod. Okay, fine. We all are entitled to our losses of our cognitive abilities on occasion. I mean, it's difficult. it's difficult to keep the high-speed rail running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without ever taking a break for maintenance. And, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, it is what it is. I'm not gonna worry about it until round 2.
Awesome. And I really hope we get to do that, because I would love to hear what happens next, especially as things are unfolding. And, let me just give a little bit of a hopeful message out there to those of you who are still bothering to listen to me. Here's the deal. Just because the world is very, very dark, and just because, the idea of illumination has been co-opted by certain individuals, to shed light in even one dark corner is sometimes all it takes to get the rest of the room lit. And that is all I have to say about that. Don't ever surrender your optimism in favor of submission to the larger construct around you. Think for yourselves, be the people that you are supposed to be kind to one another, and that's about it. That's all I can say. By the way, you've been listening to UCY.TV radio. This is the Ochelli Effect. We're just about out of time. You can reach me via email at chuck1972 at lycos.com. And Dylan does The Truth Speaks, which is on YouTube as sort of an independent show, and also airs on Shake and Wake Radio. What are those times and days again, Dylan?
Wednesdays at 6 to 8, and Saturdays at 5 to 7 Eastern.
Right, these times are Eastern. The Ochelli Effect is Tuesday and Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, and Saturdays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. And, hey, if you're not in the Eastern time zone, just check your stuff out. Sorry we didn't get any phone callers in, but actually nobody called. And the Skype was kind of silent. I almost wonder if I'm on the air.
You're on the air.
All right. Why, you can see the revulsion in the chat room?
I can see the chat room going. I don't think it's a revolt, but I can see it going.
Well, in a couple of seconds, if you guys sound off, you'll let us know that at least we did a show. And, again, Dylan, I really appreciate you coming on with me. And we will be doing some other interesting projects. And, you are more than welcome to drop in on the 9/11 show. If for nothing else, to make that very short statement that you made right there, maybe you want to expand upon it. And, and we'll just continue to do what we do.
Can I call you up after the show?
What, tonight?
Yeah.
I usually stay on for a couple of minutes with my guests, so of course we'll talk after my obnoxious bumper kicks in, which should be, let's see now, if I read my clock, in about 3 minutes, I guess.
Usually it kicks in like a minute or two beforehand, so yeah, we have about 1 or 2 minutes.
Yeah, but I just readjusted my clock, so God only knows. And of course, that was recorded in 1992, and you can find that on the SoundCloud too. If you just look for Chuck Ochelli, Ochelli, on the SoundCloud. I think the introduction to this show is on there. I do believe the raw stuff that it was made from is on there. Many, many shows archived on that particular account as well. Hardly anybody goes to it, so it won't be too busy for you to download. Okay, then. And, like I said, Dylan's stuff is available on YouTube. And I don't know, does Shake and Wake have a way you can download your shows? Are they archived? What's going on?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, I still haven't gotten the archives for my last 2 shows.
And you can always get the archives of my shows a couple of minutes later on the UCY.TV page/TOE, of course, UCY.TV/TOE, and they're organized by date. Also, you can find UCY.TV's YouTube channel. Also, thanks for listening on the iTunes radio app thing. Not a radio app, the iTunes radio system, whatever that is, UCY is covered on there. There we go, see?
Hey, I didn't jinx you. That's only your third.
I think so, but it is actually carried on the iTunes radio system, the TuneIn app, I think Shoutcast. There's probably a few other widgets and things that you can listen to us on if you're not on the homepage. But I dare you to check everybody else out. Souvenir event over the weekend. Souvenir event, you have Against the Wall with JJ Inc., Mr. James Freeland, definitely a guy I recommend. Nick Burnaby, the Anti-Media Radio, you have Anti-Tyranny, well, wait, I don't know if that's still there. There are plenty of people, of course, the Geoengineering Watch, Prepper Chicks, all that kind of good stuff on ucy.tv. Check it all out. Even if you don't like what's on the live stream, there is tons of archive stuff, news feeds, everything else before the first Cup of Morning News show. I happen to enjoy it when I can get a chance to listen to it. Anyway.
Webcam microphone up close. Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
But I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, that guy, how can that be possible? The brain, you know, days and the fondle slab of choice. I don't know what computers doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter whether the cartoon comes from, as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to have just read two together. Whenever I try to